Well, hello, Perfect Death here, and I'm gonna do a video on this game called Foundations. Came out in 1.0, and there's a fair bit of changes. Played this game prior to the 1.0 quite a bit, and so there's some interesting things that have changed over time. Some things have kept the same, and in this particular video, I mostly want to cover the population, how you can basically keep their needs met, because maintaining people's needs is a pretty important thing for your villagers up here. And you can just hover over this one, and you can find out some of your information about them, like whether or not you're going to get any immigration. You can see here, because the happiness and, well, mostly the employment is very low because I have 6 unemployed people. So it's pretty much put a pause onto my immigration. You can always click this and disable that if you don't want people just wandering in all the time. You still have to click on them to automatic to bring them in, but this will like disable them from wandering in and standing around for a while if you just decide to do that. And same similar thing with like your visitors. And when you pull up like the happiness on your people, over here it will sort by default from the people who are less happy at the very top, and most happy at the very bottom. So you can see I've got some people down here at 100%, and then up here I've got some people who are at like -11. And so understanding what can cause some of these is kind of important. So if you just click over on this person here, that events one, this can include quite a few things. So if you just hover over that, you might see like -80 on events. And it's like, okay, what the heck is going on with that event one? And in this case, 11%, they just got it because of the tax rate. And if I scroll down to some of these other people, um, these guys are my militiamen, so they're not paying taxes. So that's kind of why they're probably at 100% there. We go to like my commoners here, -3. So with him, they're just a -3 from the tax. So I probably could pretty easily bump up my tax rate, for example, which you can do here. I must have done something because for a while their green point was closer down to here. So I probably provided them a service that has made them a lot happier, and therefore I can very easily bump up their tax rate. And as you can see, that's even adjusted this because this is going to fill up and create a bigger negative penalty towards them, right? Now, if I go back to, let's start with the serfs, because you always start out with serfs in this game. And you can see here with these serfs here, they'll have 2 of these needs: an essential need and an additional need. I remember this used to say required need and optional need, so maybe there's like a patch that just recently changed that. Yeah, I think something had just changed that because when I was scripting this out, it was going to be required needs, optional needs, but now it's changed. So same thing though. Um, when it comes to like the essentials, if if they don't receive any of these, I think it's around like a -20% if they aren't getting any need in particular. And so if they aren't getting any at all, it's really low. Because like if they don't get these 3 here, it's going to be like a -60 right away, and like another -20 for these. Um, it's the thing to really keep in mind is that when it comes to the essential needs, you will gain an event if it's not being met that will add extra negatives to it. So if you say run out of rustic food, and that need is going to immediately give you like a -20. But the longer that need goes unmet, you're going to see an event pop up where a required rustic food need is not being met, and then it's going to over time get bigger and bigger. Um, for a while, that was happening with me for housing at the very start because I wasn't building enough houses for a lot of the new people. I was bringing too many people in. They weren't getting enough houses. And it's, over time it'll stack up and get bigger and bigger for that particular person. And eventually it can get so bad that they'll leave. But it can take a really long time. And as soon as they get that need met, it instantly gets rid of that event debuff. So in some cases, like with say a church service, if you like, this one has a 66 capacity, but I've got 160 people. I do have a second church now, but for a while this church with 66 was able to satisfy like 120 people. And that's mostly because it does feel like the people do kind of rotate, essentially, because as they'll get that event for requiring church service, eventually they'll get around to getting a service, and then it clears that event. Now, serfs don't require, it's not an essential need to go to church or to have refined food. They definitely get happier. So if you don't give them these, they're going to be at like 60-70% happiness, right? Depending on also tax rates. But if you want to tax them higher without them getting upset and leaving, you would want to then provide them with a refined food or a service. Both means that you can get the tax rate higher. So if we go over to here, this green layer gets further up the more of their needs are being met. So it might start out like right here, and then it'll go up to here as you give them more of their needs. But if you don't fill like the refined food need, they'll only ever just have that -20. They will never get that stacking debuff. Meanwhile, if you want to make the jump to commoners, right, because I do have 26 commoners, right? So if we go to a commoner here, you can see that they have the refined foods and the services are now up here, right? They don't care about the rustic food. They just want 2 types of refined food, and they require the service. The other things are additional needs, so they don't need to go to an inn. They don't for a drink. They don't need clothing, right? They help boost up their happiness. So if you want to tax them more, because commoners do basically earn more money, and therefore you get more tax money generated from them. And also certain jobs they're more productive at. So if I go to the bakery here, it says best suited for commoners. So if I put in a serf, it's only going to give a half of the efficiency. You can see in this green bar here, right? Their total productivity of 50% because there's 2 out of 4 commoners. If I add a serf, then it goes up to 63. I only gained 13 instead of a 25%, right? So if I were to promote this serf, then this would jump up to 75. And so that becomes something to consider. So in the previous versions, you could not put serfs into a commoner job, right? And so you had to promote people to put them into these jobs. Now it's just a production penalty that you get, which is definitely easier to manage and micromanage. You're not feeling so rushed. Like it took in this particular city, I didn't make the jump to commoners for a very long time. Well, relatively long. I waited until I got my 2 refined foods going. So one of them was meat from the boars, and then the other is wheat. And so that's the farming one and the butchering one. I also had the clothing set up, and I also had the the inn going, which is yeah, this one right here, the tavern. So I had tavern, I had clothing, bread, and butchering beef before I went for commoners. Now you do also want the decoration as well. So there is quite a bit of stuff to get um, your commoners really happy. And when you go back to your commoners, like the housing need, for example, they want the next tier up of housing. So there's some housing types, like if you look at these two houses, this house is just a regular house that serfs are okay with. So you can see here I've got two serfs here. They're totally fine with this house. If you hover over it, you can see the three different housing icons. So they're totally fine with living in either of those three types of houses. Meanwhile, if we go over to this one, you can see a serf is living in this one, and he's definitely happy with that. But then I've got one of the stone cutters over here, a stone mason, and she's a commoner, and so she wants the tier 2 house. And the requirements to upgrade to those tier 2 houses is to have a beautification area and a commoner living in the house, right? Also, desirable just means that they're not in the zone of noise. So there's actually some noise being produced from like these here. So this red aura, if I move this over here, it's gonna make these houses upset, and they will lose this and probably get demoted down to this low quality housing. So if you want the housing to upgrade so that commoners are happy to live there, then you want for sure to unlock that beautification upgrade too. So that's quite a bit of things to upgrade if you want fully happy commoners. But you don't really need to get all of it right away, right? So I kind of mentioned it with some of their needs. Um, there was a previous city I did where I was only really providing them all with one of the refined food types. It was mostly because I had designed the city in a really big, long area, and the one refined food was available to everybody, but I didn't really have a second refined food in distributed far enough around. So most of my commoners were only getting one out of two refined foods. And I basically didn't pay attention to it, didn't really bother with it for like 10 in game years plus or something like that. And that debuff got to like minus 90 for some of them. And that was when people were starting to leave. And I was like, uh oh, I gotta do something about that. So I set up like a cheese industry on the other side so that the other side was, happy. But so jumping from, say, a commoner to, if I go over to here, when you go to like the promotion thing too, this is the other another way of promoting people is so like this is one way of looking through this sort of stuff. But the main thing here is you can see what kind of things you would want to start providing them. Again, like the entertainment and the goods are not required, but they are shown up on this list. So that's why I was showing it the other way. But when we go down to like the commoners, I'm going to start needing to supply them with luxury. I don't know if I need it or if it's a required or if it's an optional, but basically, yeah, I've got quite a few people who would like to become citizens, but I don't currently have a good production of luxury goods set up right now. Like I have the thing to distribute them. I would probably have to import if I wanted to do it right now. But yeah, I don't really have that set up. And so far, I'm doing pretty good at this state. I'm making lots of money. And a big part of that is that I've centralized everything pretty nicely. The way I've been producing a lot of meat to fulfill all of my meat needs in particular is when I was buying regions. I bought this region, I bought this region, and part of this region here. And I set up a forester to just reforest most of this area so that it became really dense with woods. And this area is pretty much a big spawn point for boars now. But because I've got 3 hunters in this area, you see they kind of hunt them back, but they haven't wiped them all out. Some of them are hanging around the border edge here, but these ones are just a little too far away to get hunted quickly before some more start popping up in here. So I could definitely, this like 3 area thing can produce a lot of boars. So that's one of the ways I make a lot of money, is just buy like 2 or 3 regions and just forest them. And then you can have like 3 or 4 hunters easily, or more. I think you can do more than that. There's definitely some math that you could figure out based on the location, how far away they are. But this has been producing me a surplus of boars that I'm turning into meat, and I'm selling a lot of the meat as well for money, because meat's pretty you make a pretty good price on meat. And then over here I've got 2 wheat farms, a mill, and then the bakery. So I am getting my 2 refined foods from there. Now, one of the other things of note that I was trying out here in this particular city was housing density, because it is really, like I mentioned in the other one, I had everything so spread out because a lot of my stuff was low density. And so the markets, I had to build multiple markets. Like I had to have one over here, I had to have one over here, and then I had to have one over here because I was like that spread out. And this one, I'm all just right here in this one spot, right? This is where almost everybody lives. And some of these houses are still pretty vacant. I've still got quite a bit of room, but it's getting pretty full here. But they're all being serviced by this one market area here. And to get, especially early on, to get the housing density up, you have to go through these like light fortifications. You need a patrol, and then you can go to medium density. Medium density is going to put you to from 2 people, it'll bring you to 6 people. Then when you hit high density, you hit 10 people, and it all takes up the same amount of space. But to get to the medium, you need to have light fortification and patrol coverage. And so light fortification is generated from things like towers. This right here, for example, is actually a tower, so it will radiate fortification around itself. And sometimes you can see it through the like the patrol thing. It'll be this purple aura. And then you can paint patrol routes. You don't really need to have like the walking paths. I was just trying to see if I could influence that, but pretty much all you do is just put a little like patrol spot onto a house, and then any patrollers will try to walk there, right? And building a wall is going to give fortification to anything inside of the wall. If we go over to here as a little test, this wall right here, it doesn't have any gates, but these being close enough will actually create like a little sealed area. So you can see right around here, right? Actually, I might have... Do we have... Yeah, I do actually have a fortification view. So you can see here that this is still enough without gates to create an enclosed area of light fortification. I've also done something similar over here, and this has a really big gap, but it was just enough to create some fortification for these two houses. And these are two medium density houses. I then have a little like patrol spot over here, and the little guards, they try to like patrol around here. Over here is the main watch post, and these guys patrol around here. And so to get to that, one way is to unlock village fortifications. That will get you the watch post, but you can get it both of these really early, because this is going to get you your light fortification walls, your watch posts, your watchtowers. But you have to get to this tier. Now, if you do the kingdom start, like how I did here, then the castle keep is going to give light fortification, right? And so the light fortification, if I can close that, it's basically a castle type that will provide you with, yeah, it's this rustic wooden keep. You can see how it's got this aura around it. So I had put that in the middle here, and it had turned some of these places into medium density. The church tower is also a form of light fortification. The tax building that I have here, this was also a sort of a source of light fortification. And but eventually I got to the walls, right? And when I hit the walls, it gave me that light fortification, but you have to hit this one. And so I got these wooden, actually no, this one, oh yeah, this is the heavy fortification wall. This was just light fortification walls. But this gives you the rustic fortified keep. If you hit tier 2 on kingdom, right, so we go back to this guy. So this particular one here, I'll just actually show him, is this one. I basically used to have the wooden keep in this spot. I've since destroyed it and replaced it with a fancier one. But later, when I got to that tier 2, I built the rustic fortified keep here. And this one produces heavy fortification. And it's actually a darker purple. It's a bit harder to see. You can kind of see it when you bring it over light fortification, because it's that darker purple. And that heavy fortification, you can see I've got another thing that's generating out of there. But yeah, I could put that over there if I wanted heavy fortification. But so the quickest way I found to get to heavy fortification is to go straight for this one. This is going to get you your light. This is going to get you your heavy, and you can enclose a city in wooden walls for a big zone. So this area could have been, it originally was a wooden wall. So everything inside of here was medium fortification. But then I eventually hit this third tier with the stone castle wall. And so if you build a stone castle wall, anything inside gets heavy fortification. Now, if you're doing like the labor route, you won't hit heavy fortification until this tier, right? So that's quite the ways to go if you're doing labor and you want to go heavy fortification. You got to go all the way down there. So technically, if you wanted to, you could try to also, because both of these require prosperity, but 25 kingdom splendor is not that hard to get. I think the way that I got it, spammed it out, was there was a particular thing that was pretty cheap. So these porches, for example, you can see this porch has it gives 2 of the splendor, the kingdom splendor, for 5 planks, 1 tool. Now, basically everything that's going to give you splendor is going to require a tool of some kind. This one is a 2, but it requires 2 two tools. This one is same amount, but it's a larger one, costs more planks, right? Some of these are higher tier things if you wanted to get them. I think like menacing stakes, for example, that's also something that's a one tool, but it's only one splendor, right? So some of these ones, like this one here, for example, the cooking pot, requires 2 iron, 2 tools, and you only get 2 splendor out of it. So the way that I ended up getting enough splendor to upgrade was the small porch, basically. And I think I think that came in this, to be honest. I have to. Actually, no, wait, it did come with this one. So this was how I got to 75. That's right. That's how I got to 75. When it came to getting to 25, that was. I'm trying to remember, what did I do? Nah, I forgot. I'd have to go from scratch because I kind of forgot which ones, but yeah, this isn't really a guide for rushing too heavy. I just went off on a tangent. This is mostly a guide on making these people happy. But before I end, I do want to bring up one last thing, and that had to do with pastures. So I mentioned how in here this was my like hunting area. I've actually got 2 pastures in here as well. Or yeah, there's the other pasture. So I got 2 pastures, and you can put pastures into places where you have boars, right? So you can see I've got boars up there still, and it's technically a pasture. The pastures don't seem to disrupt your boar population, right? Like there's 2 boars there, but this is right in my pasture zone. And so that's a good way of making extra dual use out of a forest area. For getting boars, you can turn it into a pasture as well. And so in this case, I'm using it to get wool. You can also do it for your dairy farm to make cheese, for example. Like right here, the dairy farm. This will also require a pasture. And so if I could, for example, put him into like this area here and then have his pasture in this zone, for example, and that would get me, milk plus boars at the same time. And so then it makes better use because it costs money. If you buy that, it's going to cost you like 100 coin and an upkeep cost on top of that. So especially early on, creating these like multi-purpose forests so that you can get your wool for your clothing and your boars for your meat. Very useful. So anyway, that'll be it for this video. Might eventually make some more as I progress along because there's some other ones. I'm still investigating how like the military stuff works. I haven't really gone down into the later tiers on it yet, so we'll see. We'll see when I get to that sort of stuff. But anyway, that'll be it for this video. Take care.